Okay, so hi, welcome everyone. It's lovely to see you all. I'm Liz Meany. I'm the Arts Director for Performing Arts with the Arts Council. And thanks so much for coming along today. I'm going to be presenting today. I'm going to be presenting with Miriam Walsh, who's the officer working with us on creative production supports. We intend that the session will be recorded, so the recording will start. And we intend that the session will be about an hour long. Our presentation takes around 20 minutes. We then have some questions that we've received in advance from people. We'll run through all of them. And then if people feel comfortable, if you wish, please turn on your cameras. If you have questions, we'll open the floor to take questions then from people. I just ask you to please raise your hand if you're asking a question at that point in time, just because it's easier to manage if we have a lot of questions coming in. So listen, that's great. We'll start now and we'll just start running through it. So this is our agenda for today. I'll be presenting the first part and we'll run through the second part of it. And as we said, please hold your questions. So yeah, we're going to do a general overview of making great artwork and then run down to the scheme itself, looking at its objectives, budgets, awards, who can and cannot apply. And then Miriam will actually take you through the detail about the guidelines, the process, the documents, the dates and the deadlines, general advice, and then we'll go to the Q&A. Okay, so making great artwork is our overall strategy, and the skills and its objectives look at establishing the coordinates by which we will lead the development of the arts. And the particular objectives that this award speaks to within making great artwork are to develop the capacity to grow, diversify audiences and encourage engagement. We seek to encourage co-production, co-presentation and partnership, and to enable artists to understand the necessity of creating relevant and achievable public engagement strategies. So we'll just move on to the next, but all Making Great Artwork is available to you. This scheme has been in operation since 2021, and there has been 3 recipients of it to date. These are Field Arts, Mehel, and Ones Off Productions. There's some detail here on it, but you can also see in all of their websites, they contain information on the various awards and the work that they've done over the course of time since 2021 when they've received the award. They're all multidisciplinary in their approach to and we're working with multiple artists and multiple projects. Okay, if you want to move on there, Mary. So every scheme that's operated by the Arts Council, it has particular objectives and priorities that speak to what we see as acute developmental needs within the sector. And these are usually articulated in this portion of the guidelines. For creative production supports, this is following on a pilot programme. We are now seeking proposals that collaborate with the existing infrastructure to provide additional arts-led supports for the independent arts sector, in particular, those in receipts of Arts Council project awards and arts grants funding. The support creative production for us is a process that turns artistic ideas into reality. It supports artist development alongside the resourcing, presentation, and public engagement needs and opportunities. The objective is to provide high quality arts-led supports for the independent art sector for up to 2 years, developing an articulation of best practice, optimizing existing resources and networks in the development, production, co-production, presentation, co-presentation, and touring. And it's important that people understand here what we're talking about is not the funding of the work itself, but the funding of the support that leads to high quality work. And that the focus here is on multiple artists and multiple projects. So what we understand that there is an acute production gap here for a range of independent artists working within the sector, and that supports are needed for them. So that's what this award is seeking to address, those gaps. For the purposes of the scheme, a professional artist is defined as any individual who works as a professional artist in a creative capacity in any arts context and is recognised as such by their peers. If such an individual artist were to receive the award, they may be required to form a company limited by guarantee if awarded under the scheme. Thanks, Mary, you might move on. Okay, so, and this is just looking again And this is a kind of a scoping out under section 1.2 of the guidelines of what proposals could look at. It's to give you some examples, really. So opportunities to develop high-level production skills, provision of leadership, mentorship, training and development opportunities, support engagement of producers who would support the work of multiple artists and arts makers, provision of access to development opportunities that support artistic quality, provision of or access to practical resources, administrative management resources, to assist in the development of practice, production and dissemination of work, assistance and resources to enable understanding of public engagement needs, strategic planning and sustainability, developing opportunities to present work in partnership with funded organisations, festivals and other platforms, understanding the international context and access to international opportunities as well. And priorities will be given to proposals that are based on their potential for sustained impact on the arts sector. So this is about sustainability, their potential for sustained change and impact on the professional development of the artists involved, the potential to support early career artists and producers. So it is important that the group of artists and the group of partners who are working on the project, the focus here is on early career artists and producers, and their potential to support greater equity of opportunity in creative production. This is addressing issues of spatial inequalities and social or economic profile of the artists involved. Approaches also that encourage resource sharing across art forms and arts disciplines. And to be clear, there are not specific art form or arts practice priorities within this award. It is an open award to all art forms and to multidisciplinary awards. If you want to move on, Miriam, please. Okay, so this is to give you a sense of the context, the budgetary context for the awards. There is funding available to support activities that will take place for a period of up to 24 months, commencing in January 2024. So in 2024 and 2025. The Arts Council will only consider 24-month funding when applicants provide significant detail of their activities and programmes over the period. We reserve the right to offer 12-month funding as opposed to 24-month funding. The total fund available is 1 million per annum or 2 million in total for the period 24 to 25. It is anticipated that we will be making 4 awards to a maximum award of 480,000 each, and that's over a 2-year period. So this total amount will be broken down to maximum amount available per year across 2 funding years, 240 in 24 and 240 in 25. And just for you to get a sense of the competitive context, the last time there were 7 applications received for the 2020 pilot programme, 4 of which were shortlisted, and in total at the end 3 awards were made. So that's to give you a sense of the context. Okay, so who can apply? For the purpose of the scheme, a professional artist, and I've gone through this already, is defined as any individual who works as a professional artist. And again, such applicants may be required to form a company. Individuals are collaborative entities, 2 or more people who wish to make a joint application. That is also possible. Organisations, including companies limited by guarantee, designated activity companies, DACs, partnerships. That is to say, those not in receipt of Arts Council strategic partnership or Arts Centre funding. If you are in receipt of Arts Council strategic partnership or Arts Council or Arts Centre funding, you cannot be the lead applicant to this award. However, all applications received must have a partnership with an Arts Council strategic partnership or Arts Centre funded organisations evidenced as part of their application. You want to move on? Okay, so who can apply? So I've just said this, and those in receipt of strategic partnership or Arts Centre funding. Individuals who work in an ongoing basis with any of the above organisations where the principal or principal are employed in the above. So if you're employed on a full-time basis in a strategically Arts Centre funded or partnership organisation, you cannot be the lead applicant to one of these awards. Organisations or entities without a track record in the development, production or dissemination of the arts. Applications intended to benefit artists or practitioners who are already employed on a full-time or part-time basis by organisations in receipt of strategic or Arts Centre funding. Organisations seeking to support vocational undergraduate or postgraduate training. And this is the detail of what costs you can apply for. Now, I'm not going to take our time by going through this in detail. This is all available here under section 1.1 of the guidelines. And so you can see the various costs covered there. And what you cannot apply for, again, this is section 1.11, costs that do not fit the purpose of the scheme, ongoing overhead or admin costs, or the relationship with arts activities proposed is unclear, major capital or building costs. If you want to go on, Marion. And this is your part.
Yeah, I'll take over here. So we just strongly encourage all applicants to review the Creative Production Supports guidelines, which are on the Arts Council website before you submit an application. So you can go onto the Arts Council homepage. There's a tab at the top of the page called Funding. Once you click onto that, there's a drop-down menu and you will select Available Funding. You'll need to locate the Creative Production Supports tab on the Available Funding page. There'll be a green tab here, Accepting Applications, which you will click into. And a PDF copy of the Creative Production Supports guidelines will appear on the right-hand side of the page. You can click on that to open it, and it should give you the guidelines, which will outline the various eligibility criteria and information required to complete a funding application for the scheme. In order to apply for the scheme, it must be done through our online services portal. We won't be accepting any applications submitted by post, fax, email, or delivered by hand. You must have an online services account to apply for funding. So once you've signed up, you will get an email containing your unique ARN, or artist reference number, and password within 5 working days. So we would advise you to apply well in advance of this deadline closing. But if you have any technical support needs, you can please contact us by emailing onlineservices@artscouncil.ie, or you can call us by the number on screen as well. The Creative Production application form must be downloaded from OLS, so it can be filled out using Microsoft Word or Excel or OpenOffice Writer and OpenOffice Calcon, and then it is uploaded through the Online Services portal. So you'll need to log into Online Services using your ARN and password. Once you've done that, on your homepage within OLS, you will click Make an Application button. On the Making Application screen, you will select your organization's primary contact for the application and click Next. The screen 1, Making an Application, Choosing a Funding Program should appear. In section A of the form, you should click Funding drop-down list and select your funding program, i.e. the Creative Production Support Scheme. And then your reference field, you will type in a unique reference for your application, and this will help to identify your application on the homepage. In section B, you will click the buttons to download the guidance notes and the application form. But for further information on filling out the application form, you can consult the CPS guidelines on pages 22 to 30. So alongside your application form, you will be required to upload supporting material, which is mandatory in all cases, with the exception of budgets as outlined in section 2 below, which should be provided separately. All other supporting material should be provided within a single document and include a contents page. So alongside number 1, a completed application form, you should also upload a budget provided in a Microsoft Excel or OpenOffice Calc document, incorporating a high-level summary budget showing the proposed overall outcome and expenditure against the 2 years of your proposal. You'll also need to upload CVs of all confirmed key artists and personnel in delivering the proposed programme of work. This will need to be a maximum of 2 pages for each. You will need to provide documentary evidence of confirmed support outlining co-production, co-creation, partnership and financial commitments. This will include an agreed memorandum of understanding with your partners to strengthen your application. Where all partnerships are not yet confirmed, your application must demonstrate that your plans are feasible by providing evidence of your track record with regard to co-production and co-creation. We also require you to upload 3 to 6 examples of previous work and up to 3 additional visualizations or charts that demonstrate essential information in support of what you write within your application. So moving on to other supporting material, these won't always be mandatory, but they will be required in certain circumstances. So if you are commissioning professional artists as part of your scheme, you will be required to provide a commissioning policy. If you are providing workspace for artists, you will then be required to provide evidence and specifications of the space you'll be using, the costs, and any additional support you may be receiving. If you are providing services to children and young people, you must provide suitable child protection policies and procedures in place. When making an application, you must indicate in the application form whether or not your proposal is relevant to this age group. If you are working with vulnerable persons, you must include an acknowledgement that you adhere to the national policy and procedures on safeguarding vulnerable persons and at risk of abuse. And finally, if you are working with animals, you will need to provide a copy of your animal welfare protection policies and procedures. Once we have received your application forms, the assessment process then begins. Once you've uploaded your application form and all supporting documents, you should receive 2 emails. The first is to acknowledge your application, and the second will provide your application number, which you will use on all subsequent correspondence. If you've not received an email, please do contact online services at theartscouncil.ie. So once we receive your application, we will check it to make sure it's eligible for the scheme. Your application will then be assessed based on the criteria outlined in Section 2 of the guidelines. A panel will then meet to consider these assessments and score the applications to determine a shortlist. Once the shortlist has been gathered, applicants will be invited to make a presentation to the panel. The selection panel will score the shortlisted applications and then make a final decision about which proposals to offer funding to. We will write to the successful applicants confirming the offer of funding, and then there will be a meeting with the successful applicants to agree the next steps and set out timelines. But please note, assessment reports will be available upon request to all applicants who apply for the scheme. Finally, just a note of the dates and deadlines, which will be important to consider. So the deadline for creative production supports will be 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, the 31st of August, 2023. Shortlisted applicants will be invited to make a presentation to panel in November 2023, and we then expect to inform applicants of our decisions by November 2023 as well. Lastly, we will just provide some general advice and contact details. We would strongly recommend that you allow for plenty of time to complete your application form, read the latest guidelines as outlined previously in this presentation, read them carefully and pay attention to any must or mandatory requirements. And please be sure that you're clear in your application, that you understand the eligibility criteria, the scoring process, and the weighting for the assessment criteria. All of this is outlined in the guidelines. But if you have any queries regarding eligibility or technical aspects, or if you don't think any of your questions have been fully answered within the presentation and Q&A session, you can, of course, contact us via the following. So I am the Arts Officer. You can contact me at the following number, 01618 0200, and then email murren.walsh@artscouncil.ie. We are ready to answer some questions, so I'm going to hand back over to Liz.
Okay, so I'm going to firstly run through some of the questions that we've received in advance from people, and we're going to run through the responses to them, because they may well answer some of the questions that you have, and then we'll open it up for if there's any further questions. So I'll go through these here. So Miriam, if you want to ask me the question, then I'll do the responses.
Yeah. So for artist projects with multiple outcomes, can this grant support costs associated with producing and presenting different elements of the work at various venues?
So the primary intention of the scheme is not to fund the creation of work, but rather the development of work. The objective, and this is from the guidelines, the objective of the initiative is to provide high quality art-led production supports for independent art sector for up to 2 years, developing an articulation of best practice, optimizing existing resources and networks in the development, production, co-production, presentation, co-presentation and touring.
So if the award is not covering the creation of a body of new work, can it cover costs such as mentoring programs or fees towards residency programs and research fees?
Yeah, in brief, the answer is that yes, it can. And I would advise applicants to look at, in particular, section 1.10 of the guidelines, where we give examples of the type of costs which might be included.
Can I apply for support in both disciplines in which I work? So if it's film and music, literature.
Okay, so the primary intention of the scheme is not to fund the creation of work, but rather the development of the work. It is a multidisciplinary scheme, but just also to note the intention is not to support the work of one artist, but of multiple artists. If we move on to the next question, Muireann. Oh, I think Muireann's dropped out here again, so I'll just carry on. So the next question is, can I apply for supports for attending international events and looking at festivals that focus on producers, directors, and other creatives? So again, I would say that the scheme is not intended to fund the work of one artist, but the work of a number of artists and the development and production support around those artists. And then the next question is, can funding from creative production supports be used to expand a further project in its scale and reach, looking at publication and other opportunities within a team? And again, the scheme is not intended to fund one artist or one project. It is intended to fund the supports and the production supports around a number of artists and around a number of projects, be they project awards or arts grants funded awards from the Arts Council. It is intended to support the development of a production ecology through which a range of artists and projects can be supported. Okay, and the next question is, can funding from the Creative Production Supports Awards be used to fund the touring of international work? The scheme isn't intended to primarily to fund touring per se. It doesn't fund, but it could fund the development of a tour, searching for partners, looking at those international opportunities. What is the role that a strategically funded organisation will play in this grant? And that could equally apply to an Arts Centre funded organisation or a partnership organisation, which in this instance would be either a local authority or a body such as An na Gaeltachta. The goal of collaboration and partnership with the organisation in receipt of Arts Council strategic partnership or Arts Centre funding is to provide successful applicants with a range of supports, including mentoring, provision of venues and developmental supports. And I suppose the other thing is, like, part of the aim here is really to look at ensuring that all of the supports that are there within the sector work together to support the development of work by artists. And we know that strategically funded organisations, art centres, they are critical to the support of artists and also to the engagement of audiences around the country with the work of artists. So that's what these partnerships is about. Is it possible for a venue to be part of a couple of different projects or a couple of different proposals along with a number of other partners? Can you make only one application proposals? That is for you to consider if you wish to be a partner. However, strategically, Arts Centre or partnership funded organisations cannot be the lead partners. It is your choice what partnerships you may wish to be involved with. However, partnerships should be meaningful. So the partnerships that you engage with and the applications which come in with partnership, there should be meaning behind that and intention behind that in terms of what the reality, should the award being given, will be. And if you're part of very many applications, the chance for that to be meaningful in terms of your engagement with the application would seem to me to reduce. So I would just think people need to consider that themselves. As an organisation, how many artists can we support? That is for the applicant to decide. You need to decide the range of artists and projects you can support in a way which is meaningful and which is also sustainable for the people involved, both the artists, but also the people involved in the creative production support itself. Do we need partners on board confirmed? Yes, you will be required to submit an MOU as outlined in section 1.12. And as already stated, all applications to CPS must have a strategically funded, Arts Centre funded or partnership funded organisation as a partner. If the funding is to be awarded to one organisation as the main awardee, or is it possible that multiple organisations could split the award? The scheme will be awarded to one awardee as outlined in section 1.4. The applicant is the person or organisation who will receive any grant offered and who must accept the terms and conditions of that grant. Any grant we offer will only be paid into the bank account in the name of the applicant, and it will be that applicant who will be expected to report on the use of that funding in the form of income and expenditures signed by auditors, which need to be returned on an annual basis to the Arts Council. So the financial responsibility for the reporting on the award and its expenditure resides with the lead applicant, and that would be important that that is understood. Can the project be supported by a cultural organisation already in receipt of Arts Council funding? Yes, as already stated. It can be supported by strategic partnership or Arts Centre funded organisation, but they cannot be the lead applicant. Is it permissible for the lead applicant to be an AGF funded organisation? It is permissible under the guidelines. However, it is our intention that as much as possible organisations apply for all of their funding at one time. So it is intended that actually creative production supports arts grants funded organisations as opposed to arts grants funded organisations seeking to get additional funding through creative production supports. And this is another question in relation to, can a strategically funded organisation support more than one application? Again, this is the same response as previously. You need to consider really the quality of the partnerships. If you're involved in a range of applications, you need to consider what does that say about the quality of those partnerships. And does a local authority qualify as a supporting organisation? Yes, it does. Local authorities are classified as partnership funded organisations by the Arts Council. And the last question we have received in advance is what is meant by the term existing infrastructure. Existing infrastructure refers to organisations in receipt of Arts Centre funding or strategically funded awards, but we know it's broader than that as well. There's a number of organisations who are funded either directly by local authorities or by other schemes within the Arts Council. So yeah, it means the existing ecology of the arts across the country, where the work of artists is made and realised. And there is no implication that you need to work with those CPS schemes that have already been funded, but whose funding is now, that funding was from 2021 to 2023. That funding is now complete. And what we're recognising here with the scheme is that there is gaps in the resourcing across all of the art sector in terms of the production supports available to artists in making of their work and its realisation. So that's what this gap is seeking to address.